Come plunging with me into the deep political end of the discussion in the frozen pool in the ever-white, or Coca-Cola and corksed-up tundra of Finland under the eerie dance of northern light and flickering street lamps, where we observe a carefully choreographed mating dance of tramps, the wine-nose on ice, the nomadic polar bears on icy street of Van Helsing furs as these magnificently sized albino-coated four bowls tread back their tipsy way from the local twinkle of bar lights in the preferred John Barleycorn's establishment, and accidentally went and done gulped down a passerby's snow got in the polar bear's ice, and he mistook the poor tourist on a tour for a sesh kebab. I am Sir David Blackadder's borough, and here at this deep end of the political pool I daringly stand deep in locally sourced Finnish in a stall a stallion's manual, safely tucked under this coat of snow up to my groin. I am indeed the Sir David Blackadder's borough here, and I dare to ask such absurdities as is Finland a Swedish colony? Has it ever been? Well, what I can state without a tremor of doubt is that the plight of the Finnic people persists to this very day under white man's colonization. I myself am of course 1/16 in Den Navajo, so I am excluded of the pink man's guilt. Now don't be ridiculous and get guilty. Hear me out instead. Whilst I blast off this blasted political phlegm and sink my tuskers into the very politics of very nan colonization, very meaning blood in Finnish. This is not a story of colonization per very as such. Instead, it is a story of two very, very red-bearded blondish tribes banding together, and then one tribe wanting to unify both tribes, under one slithering Swedish snake tongue. The colonistic part is really just the language policy, and that is why so many Finns are up in arms about having to still learn and pass Swedish before one gets graduated as a plumber or a car mechanic. That is why it is advisable, in my humblest of opinions, for modern-day Sweden to hurriedly join NATO, or Finns might take over and force all Swedes speak Finnish. And if you can fathom but mere to words, you just never be graduated and be made a pauper while the Finns point and laugh at you. Say those Swedes just drink as they don't know anything else. They are too thick and dumb to even learn to speak a human language besides their own backward skipper-japper. There is no country on earth that is as much a stickler to the rules as Finland is about making its every farmer and shoemaker and toilet cleaner learn Swedish. Still, at least now, it's not like every Swede has to pass their Spanish exam before they can be let out of school. It is even more difficult than that. It is learning a language that is not from the same language family even. It is like Swedes had to learn Mongolian or Greenlandic. It feels completely alien and serves no practical purpose. Coincidentally, when Finns and Swedes migrated to settle America, Finns were labeled the same as Native Americans, the China Swedes they were called. Well, it is not like there aren't any similarities. Finns and the indigenous, or should say the real authentic Americans, the real Yanks of Colorado, Chicago and Arizona, and like the fine representatives at the Republican caucus, both the real Americans and Finnic tribes share a deep-rooted need to go to church via sweat lodging. What's more, Finns have it easiest when it comes to learning an indigenous tongue. Theirs is so similar to the languages of the European originals, such as the Scald Sami, Anna Sami, and Kildin Sami, that they can rather effortlessly pick one. So basically Finns are much better equipped to learn the Navajo of Europe rather than their compulsory Swedish. They're Swedish. Why on earth? So do we have a country where the indigenous built their own country and now reign sovereign in it? Due to the history of her first being under Sweden and not under her own rules, speaking her own mother tongue, the Finnish people still don't feel fully independent in this white man's white-coated world. Their sweat lodge is accepted as part of World's Heritage Program, yet the most integral component of a traditional Finnish sweat lodge is missing. Nowadays it is highly illegal to take a sweat, the old-fashioned Finnish way. The Bobs come with their bats and smack the living daylight out of one, till one has learned one's lesson to be rather legally dead, than seek medical rejuvenation. In hemp, in the advent of a life-threatening illness. That is how they finish the last of the Finnish staying true to the ways of their forefathers. The last of the Americans. Them cunning cunts. And the rules are the same in the Finnish reservation for the Sami as well. Back in the day they got burnt alive for a mere possession of a transic drum of life transient qualities, and now just elevating one's mind above the tree level is destined to land an indigenous man in prison, just as easily it lands a Finn in prison for the same Sami crime. So the indigenous are only allowed alcohol, No chalupas for the umpa-lumpas, the ena stole a hide howdy. Can you imagine if alcohol was allowed in American reservations instead of the weeds? Well, it is evident that alcohol suits no indigenous body. The natural naturally does and would be greatly needed in treating the autistic comprehension greatly in pain of autism, the amputated in severe
amputation pain.
Do not let the finish get finished. It is truly a fine land with so much potential, but it is its people, not in its natural resources. Yet, you strip the good people out of Mother Nature's bosom and give them filled with alcohol and opiates for their teething pain. First was done by Sweden, and now the people in charge are still suspected to be related to the original masters of the colony by the most patriotic of Finns, as there seems to be no other explanation why torture Finns with white man's medicine and suppress their harmless sweat-lodging traditions. The former Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin is heavily suspected for selling out the country. She was caught in camera candidly rubbing her darling muffin, grinding a raspberry donut against some man's leg, while seeming to be very high on the legal drugs, by the prescribed powdered pills snorted. Big Pharma with its tentacles of money corrupting the national health. This is much like the case of traditional Chinese medicine is taken over by fascist communistic ideals of effectiveness and giving viruses hell with overbombing the living daylight out of them with the white-coated man's medicine. To this day, there is no respect for the indigenous point of view. When a Finn tells his doctor that he is raised in a scored Sami family following a form of Christianity modified by a Sami man dubbed Lars Levi Estadius, well, it is not going in her ears. The doctor says you have no logic. How can you refuse to take medication for depression? They are just harmless pills. But why take pills for depression when I don't feel the slightest bit depressed? You protest. Well, you must be depressed. After all, your people are dying and your lands have been occupied and your holy religious places excavated. You say even if you were depressed, you would be more depressed after having taken such a pill as you believe you have, in thus doing. Sinned, and would have to go at great lengths to repurify yourself every week for the next 5 years after just one of these pills you dub utterly harmless as you bonkers. The original sin of drugs, the snake poison, then the doctor says you are denied income during sick leave. You see, if you don't believe in Western medicine, you are seen as opposing treatment and being thus rendered. Harm being thus rendered beyond all help, then you try to reason with the doctor. A mind-altering drug is a mind-altering drug. Coffee, depression pills, hard-ass street drugs, they are all drugs and thus such strictly forbidden. Coffee beans are indeed very natural, but there is nothing natural about misusing cups of joe every day to get ready for the grind. The grind at work, but not the kind you see as part of prime ministerial work of grinding the coochie. The mint-conditioned secret garden whilst at full muffin mingle with Putinist artists embracing her undoubtedly menthol minted mud flap of a beaver dentata. You can see that sort of change is brought about by imbibing full decades worth of coffee into one's brain. It shows under a brain scanner. The same goes for hard drugs and alcohol. As you can offer me no way of putting my brain back the way it was in its natural state before we met, you would have to pay me millions as compensation. If your treatment leaves me unnatural, that is. And then thus, truly in hell on earth, with the mind altered, much worse than it was before medication. The doctor responds, since you dare to alter your brain with cannabis, surely you dare to pop a pill. You have no logic. I cannot help you. But I will write here that before you ask our help next time, for the sheer weight of what you experienced and saw in the war. As a soldier, you must pass a drug test for this cannabis. Was it called? Of course, the white-coated drug dealer is so very upset she gets when she notices she cannot make a sale no matter the boogerist she tries convincing you to try his harmless pills of magic and sorcery. I choose to prefer the sorcery. Soaking one's brain with the jam sauce of fine sirs, getting bombed for breakfast, dinner time and tea, getting slaughtered like Sanna Marin and saying, so what, am I not allowed a slice of happiness, or should I say a slice of the powdered cake? The powders or alcohol she supposedly needed to enjoy amidst these dark clouds of epidemic, and stormy Zorny Vrak, and Putinist Ruskimir hanging over our well-finished Finnish heads. There are only 200 schooled Sami left. Do you have to kill off the last of the Finnish Mohicans? Don't confuse them with a very river shoe to be treated upon. They are people too, despite being very much in tune with the animalistic animal world. Could you please take a persecuted member of a minority, a medical and religious refugee to live in your country so that he can continue his tribal ways and contribute to the society? In the fine land of Finland, cannabis users aren't allowed work, driver's licenses, nor to keep their children. That is not too different from the times you weren't allowed to teach your child Sami, or you would face punishment and your child confiscated for the purposes of re-education. That is the Sami being smacked out of the Sami youth. So nowadays there is this colonization of medicine. One form of medicine is coming to independent territories and forcing itself down at our throats. One tribal love from the fine land of Finland, the land of hundreds of thousands of pristine lakes and some marshlands in between, habited by these wonderful creatures now known as Finns, and previously the people of the old time Thule. Thule to this day means fire in Finnish, or Tuli in its corrected spelling after the Roman historians. Their name to themselves is Suomi, the land of bog and the land of God. The marsh, the most sacred of our holiness, the birthing place, thus the holy of the holies. The original landscape of the dawn of humankind, the ancestral bog. And then some white man in his white coat comes to tell these descendants of apes that they are not to smoke but have to learn to drink instead. Look, I have been to the real primordial African jungle, and mark my words, as you don't want it to give a six-pack to a wild gorilla nor an injection of street drugs. What you wanted to give him is your last bag of cannabis. It soothes him ever so, almost as if he had made contact with a higher power and wants to show grace to it. One tribal love indeed, as I continue to spend my day in this white man's zoo as the remains the fine land of Finland. I reckon I shall sink my magnificent British front tuskers in reindeer silhouette. Naturally with sherry for Sir David Blackadder's Borog for the evening, and thank you very much for listening. They keep feeding me, as if they were gonna steal my tuskers when I fall asleep soundly after such a hale and hearty meal. Stop being such sticklers, measuring your slit lines with rulers, and become actual rulers. May the mighty washing wise Vizzy Bear wash you clean of your sins under the sun that never sets, so you no longer have to tread onwards in fear of the polar bears. My children, be enthused as the Dios, the Theos herself, while being spoken to by the divine source of inspiration. I for one am inspired to the point of being enthused about getting into eating Peter the once upon a time red nose. Farewell, my listeners. I now got let this steel only high ankle biter I found under the sauna bench to have a word of farewell as well. Don't forget to unsubscribe for me having been so very articulately mischievous. By the way, I forgot to inquire your fine leaders on go sinulla porcelain factor between Sun Mecca or Wampa Lake. Do you insist on acting like you got hikkaa fatty twitassatussasso?
Tervehtykääpi vaikkapa tervautumalla ja keskustelkaapi vapaasti alla vaikkapa 5 kotimaisella kielellämme, 3 kantasuomalaisella ja 2 valtasuomalaisella. Valintanne on toki vapaa. Voinhan aina myös kääntää koko videon toiveestanne. S'il vous plaît, mikäli se teittiä miellyttääpinä.